I've been brewing up this video in my head for quite a long time now, and I think now it's kind of fermented enough for me to actually share it to you guys and like feel like I have my thoughts together enough. So the thing that like kind of spurred me to make this video is I think people take themselves way too seriously nowadays. But I'm very passionate about this and I got a lot of opinions on it, and I want to share it with you guys because I think it's really important to understand this about thinking primitively and using it to your advantage in a world where everything's so freaking fast paced and we're all just like hamsters on a hamster wheel. And it really, like, once you realize this, it just brought like a lot of calmness to me. I'm able to see people way differently now. And I know that people a lot of times will say like, "Oh my gosh, this thing changed my life. You need to know about it." But like, I'm actually being real here. And yeah, if you guys, I also want to say this that there are going to be a lot of opinions in here. A lot of them are like, I want to say a lot of them are scientifically backed, but a lot of them are also opinion. So if you don't agree with it, I don't expect everybody to agree with me, obviously. That'd be a horrible world where everybody agrees with everybody. But, you can talk in the comments. I pretty much read every single comment, even on the videos where I've had thousands of comments. I usually read them as they come in, and I try and reply to you guys, and we have conversations and debates there. So let me know your thoughts. But yeah, the first point I want to talk about is body image. And I know that there is a lot of opinions on the internet about a body image, if you're fat, if you're skinny, if you look this way, oh, but body neutrality, oh no, you need to love your body, oh, blah blah blah. This is what I think about it, okay? Your body was never made for aesthetics. And this is what people get wrong, I feel like. Well, I don't want to say what they get wrong, but it causes a lot of feelings of resentment and stuff in our bodies, and just negative feelings. Is people think that our bodies are for aesthetics, that they're, here to look nice, that they're here for blah blah blah. But you are the product of thousands of years of evolution for survivability. Of course, there are some aesthetics involved, like with hair. Like we know that hair was likely an evolutionary trait based on it was basically a social evolutionary trait because if you look at some like indigenous tribes and stuff, we know that a lot of people, there's two theories that I've read on, is either long hair, especially like people who evolved in colder climates, so a lot of Caucasian people, European people, whatever, they tend to have long thick hair, very straight hair, because it protects your neck. It basically heats up your neck, and you'll notice if you're a woman or if you're a guy and you used to have long hair and you chopped it, suddenly you're cold all the time. And that's one theory. The other theory is that we used it as a way to mark what tribe you're part of. So if you notice, I think, don't mark my words on this, but I believe that there's some indigenous tribes still in America, that we know that they use certain plates, certain braids to signify which family they come from. So it's possible that they also evolved because of that. But like, this just proves either way, it's evolution, and I guess you could argue that it is partly for aesthetics, but just on the hair part. But you got to remember that up until just maybe a couple thousand years ago, maybe even 1,000 years ago, we didn't really care about how we looked. For the most part, at least back when we were hunter and gatherers, you found a mate mostly based on what they could do for you, not based on how they looked versus what it is nowadays. Um, so yeah, that's the first point. It's also very normal to compare yourself to other people as well. And I think there's this big like movement right now of like, don't compare yourself to other people. You're perfect the way you are, blah blah. Which, yeah, I would agree. Like, everybody is, you know, I don't even know if there is a real concept of being perfect if you're just an animal. But it's very normal to compare yourself to other people because that's how we survive. That's how we used to survive. Is, you'd be like, "Oh, I have this, let's say I have this certain berry and this other person has this other berry and they seem to be getting a lot more nutrients from it. I need to get that berry." And that's where it came from. And or even if like, yeah, I guess this is a good example. I feel like I could think of a better example if I actually thought about it, but it's very normal to compare ourselves. And the people that actually compare themselves back in our ancestors, far far ancestors down your family line, those are the people that survived because they were evolving, they were moving up. But we've taken it to such an extreme nowadays where it's like, oh, this chick has a purple Stanley, and I need that purple Stanley because my water bottle from that I bought 6 years ago that is perfectly functional, for some reason I don't want it anymore. I need that purple Stanley. I need that, you name it. I need that car. I need that 2024 car. I need that Maserati. I need that blah blah blah. When I have a perfectly fine 2013 Toyota Corolla, works just fine. Yeah, that's my point on that. Um we're also made to live in small tribes. This is, oh my gosh, I'm very passionate about this topic as well, is we are not built to live in huge cities. When I also want to let you guys know, most people already know this, but we're operating on a brain system that is ancient. Like, I don't want to say ancient, but it hasn't evolved for a very long time. It takes a very long time to evolve as a species. And we're operating on a system, on a brain system that is still made to be hunters and gatherers, not living in big cities of thousands of people. And the problem with that is that we used to be so much more connected with everybody around us. I can even take this point to the town that I grew up in. Is there was like, I think the whole town had about 6,000 people. My school was 9 grades that I was in that school for like 7 or 8 years before I moved, but and the entire school for 9 grades had less than 200 kids. My class was less than 40 kids, and because of that, because of how small the town was, we all felt more connected. We all knew what was going on. This can be a little bad because cliques happen, there's a lot of hierarchy that happens, but I feel like we were all much more connected. We had way more social abilities. And unfortunately that's lost on in today's modern life because we're living in these cities of thousands and millions of people, and you feel so alone. You don't even know the neighbor next to you. You don't even know their name. You've never even talked to them for maybe more than 2 sentences. And it's crazy because as humans, we kind of feel like we should feel comforted and not alone when we have people around us, but we can still feel so lonely. And that's a really dangerous feeling as well. There's a lot of evidence and a lot of science that backs up the fact that I think actually I was watching a video the other day. Being lonely, like being chronically lonely, and you can still be surrounded by people too. There's a difference between lonely and solitude, though. I will say that. But if you're chronically lonely, it's the same thing as smoking 10 cigarettes a day. Like it has the same effect on your body physically as smoking 10 cigarettes a day. And yeah, so people are just forgetting these fundamentals of us as humans, that we need these very basic things. Um and I feel like, yeah, I feel like I've said this a lot, but I feel like it's just lost in today's modern life. But I also want to touch on the point a little bit about leaders and people that we look up to or are supposed to look up to. This can be, the government, even just our boss at work, people that are supposed to be on like a higher social ladder than us. Is naturally, leaders are supposed to rise the rank naturally, right? They earn their way up to the top. They aren't put there by someone else. I guess you could argue the fact of like, maybe if, let's talk about a thousand or thousands of years ago, maybe your family was in a tribe and your dad is the leader. Maybe you would have some more, you would have some more, what do you call it? Uh, brownie points with the rest of the tribe because your dad is the leader. But it's still, you're still going to be judged by the rest of the tribe. You're still going to, like, if you make a big mistake and several mistakes over, they're not going to respect you anymore, no matter who you're related to. And that's the natural way of being, and that's not how it works today. And so I talked about this in a last video, about how ADHD works in the workplace and how we're very, like, ADHD people are very based on morality and what's right and a sense of justice. And this is one of the huge things that bothers us. And it can bother anybody. That's a trait that anybody can have, but especially ADHD people. Is that leaders today seem to never, very rarely, rise the ranks because they're actually a good worker. They tend to rise the ranks because some guy, some millionaire at the company or whatever, some CEO, puts them there because they have connections with them, not because they're actually a good worker, or maybe they suck ass or something. I don't know. And that's not natural. And there's a example. There's a lot of examples in TV shows nowadays, but if you are a fan of The Walking Dead, literally one of my favorite shows ever, this is a fantastic show to reference for this because the main character Rick, I'm going to basically give you a synopsis, but Rick, he starts off as just a normal character to us, and eventually throughout the show, he becomes the leader just naturally. And it's because he shows up. He shows that he has a lot of morals. He's a good leader. He leads the people to safety consistently. And that's also why he's a fan favorite. People love that in other people when people actually are rewarded for doing good behavior. And if you're not into The Walking Dead and you don't know what the heck I'm talking about, a better example would be with wolves. So wolves actually have this behavior. Scientists have studied wolves and their patterns with how the leaders operate versus the lower, like, quote unquote subordinates. And the whole like alpha beta thing has been long. What do you call it? What's the freaking word? I don't even know. It's been long proven that it's not true. There we go. But they found that when wolves are traveling from place to place or going out on hunts or whatever, you would expect that the leaders go in the front to lead the pack, right? They don't. They actually stay at the very butt end of the pack. The strongest wolf is at the very end of the pack. They usually travel in long lines, single file lines. The strongest wolf in the pack, that tends to be the leader, is in the back. And they're making sure that nobody gets left behind. That yeah, and I think that pretty much sums it up, honestly. And they're not influenced by anything else either. That's just a natural trait that we've found in multiple different, wolves across the world. And yeah, that's a good point to apply to humans as well. But I also want to talk about how thinking primitively can affect ADHD and any other diagnosis we have. But I want to talk about how ADHD was actually an advantage in a primitive world, and how now, because of our super fast, like, modern life, it's actually the environment that is wrong, not your brain. Because this actually applies. This is the big freaking take home point, okay? Is you as a human are not wrong. It's the environment around you that is wrong for the most part. I mean, there are some things where, like if you're doing something that's immoral that is wrong, that's a different story. But if we're talking about a lot of naturally occurring diagnoses like ADHD, schizophrenia, autism, these things were actually a benefit to people. And that's exactly why you're here. ADHD and all these other diagnoses were actually big benefits in some way or another. And that's exactly why these people survived and passed down their genes. For example, with ADHD, you'll notice if you have ADHD, you think you have ADHD, whatever, you'll notice that you notice small details everywhere. And this is just one example of the many things that you might have as an ADHD person, but you'll notice, like, there's a new noise in the room that you're in, and you're like, oh, what's that? And then you find out, oh, maybe the faucet is dripping. Nobody else noticed but you. And this applies, you can see how this easily applies to primitive life as well. ADHD people, when they were out in the wild with their family, with their tribe, whatever, it was a huge benefit to have somebody who could see the details and spot very tiny things that were changing. If you were out hunting with your tribe or with your family, um, if you were just walking around and you suddenly spot a pair of eyes in the bushes and you alert the tribe, you all survive. And those eyes in the bushes might have been a cougar or some kind of predator. You all survive and your genes get passed down. And there are a lot of examples of this with ADHD people, autistic people, that you can easily translate. Like, just think about it for a second. Be like, what are my symptoms and how would this translate very well to a primitive environment? For example, another example is hyperfixations. Back when, when we were in small towns and you were raised into a family of, like, say, blacksmiths or carpenters, you were raised to do that job. Usually your whole family did the job or something adjacent, because it was very rare to move the ranks. But if you had ADHD or autism and you had that very, very, very beneficial trait of hyperfixation, and you actually enjoyed doing this thing, you were extremely good at it. You got things done efficiently. You loved what you did, and people can feel that, and you're very good at it too. And so, say if you're a carpenter, or let's actually do maybe you're a swordsmith or something, or someone who makes shoes. When you have a hyperfixation on that, and that's what your family does, that's what your family loves, and maybe, I feel like that might be a bit of a stretch to say that your family loves it, but maybe you find the passion in it. You are going to be the best shoesmith in town, basically. And there are some there are some things that might slow you down a bit, like with ADHD people. If you are raised in this family of shoesmiths or whatever, there are going to be some things that slow you down, like ADHD people get distracted very easily, stuff like that. So you might get distracted from your work for a bit, but in general, you're probably still going to be working much faster than your peers who do not have this hyperfixation ability. And so that's exactly how this was passed down. And this is something that I feel like people just don't even think about, is people don't realize that in order for you to have ADHD, which is usually genetic trait, same with autism, I believe, I want to say by being bipolar is too. Um, Schizophrenia, I actually don't know about schizophrenia, but we're gonna get to schizophrenia in a bit. But people don't realize that these things are passed down from your family for generations. And so it had to come from somewhere. Like, somebody down the line, well, actually, everybody in your family down the line had to survive. And they had to find ways to make their diagnosis beneficial to them. And let's get on to schizophrenia, because there was this really interesting video I was watching a while ago. I think I first heard about this years ago, about how schizophrenic people back, I actually don't know when the time frame was. I want to say it was like several hundred years ago. Schizophrenic people, first of all, there was no label of that. And second of all, usually the people who had schizophrenia, they basically, what I want to say about this is, the people who had schizophrenia, and they were seen in a much better light than they are today. And we can see with examples of when society sees something that you have as bad, you it also manifests itself as something worse. So back a couple hundred years ago, schizophrenic people would be preachers and spiritualists, because people believed that the things that they were seeing were God, or spiritual beings, or people there to help them and guide them. And so what we were seeing is people actually saw these things that they were seeing that weren't real as positive things. And so their hallucinations and their auditory hallucinations as well were actually positive. And now we see nowadays that schizophrenic people tend to have very negative, very, very negative hallucinations. And, like, I even heard stories, maybe I'll try and find her name. She was talking about how she has been stabbed, like, in a hallucination. She was having a vivid hallucination and got stabbed and actually felt it. Like, she believed she was stabbed and she felt the knife, even though she knew in the moment it wasn't really real. But she talks about how she has very negative, like, all around, very negative experiences. And I believe it's because of what society has to say about it. And, nobody, very few people nowadays are like, oh, yeah, schizophrenia is awesome. These people are talking to these high beings that we can't see. And I don't know which one is right. I don't know, maybe these people are seeing spiritual beings. Maybe they are seeing something we can't see. But either way, it's proof that, what other people have to say about you, or what you believe other people are saying about you, has an actual effect subconsciously on how you experience the world. And that's very important to remember as well. Um Next, let's get to food. So, craving sugar and fats is very normal. Very, very normal. We're actually doing it way too much nowadays though. It's actually like wired in our brain to want to crave these things, because basically you can imagine if all you have available to you is deer, some roots in the ground, maybe you farm a little bit, but you don't have sugar cane, you don't have what's something else, you don't have oils for the most part, you don't have these very like calorie dense foods. You might have gluten, you might have grain, but you didn't have anything to really like spice it up. You didn't have you might have not had jam, or you might have not have had these extra sugar things. So when your body finally gets that thing, it hits you with a dopamine hit. And that's basically to keep you alive. That's exactly how our ancestors stayed alive for so long, is they craved these very high calorie dense, high what do you call it? High sugar foods, like say carrots have a lot of sugar in them, but our body needs that in moderation. That's the thing, in moderation. And but the thing is, the people who crave these things, they survived and passed on their genes, and their kids crave these things, and those kids crave those things. And that's exactly why you're always craving potato chips, or ice cream or candy bars or blah blah blah. And once you realize this, that, oh, it's not something wrong with me. I'm not there's It's not wrong for me to want to crave these things. It's actually very normal, and it's actually wired in my brain. Once you realize these things, it's very easy to stop. And that's exactly how I started to start eating, at least consciously, not just shoving food in my mouth and not thinking of like where it came from or what's in it or is this actually good for my body. Um yeah, that's what I want to say about that. And yeah, basically, in order to stop eating food unhealthily, and you actually have to overcome an instinct. So a lot of things in our lives nowadays, especially with the modern way of living, which is very much, I want it, I get it. I want it, I get it. I want this food, I'm going to get it. It's very easy. You can DoorDash. You can literally, in 3 clicks, you can go DoorDash a freaking candy bar for $12 or whatever it is. It's very easy to access these things, and you have to overcome your primitive instinct in order to stop, to lose weight and to get healthier, to eat healthier, whatever your goal is. And that's a really hard thing to do. But once you understand this, it gets way easier. Way easier. There we go. That's the English. Also, next point is wanting to be in nature. So this is another primitive thing. Um, but let's talk about, actually, I watched this video the other day about this guy that was talking about how when we were primitive beings, when we were, hunter gatherers and whatever, we basically were walking for a lot of the day. We were walking with our group, and our brains evolved to a way where when we're walking and we see like, if you're in the woods, the mere visualization of seeing the trees in front of you and moving past you in your peripheral vision and going behind you is soothing to your brain. That's it. Just the visual of it. And they've done studies on this as well. And that's very, very interesting to me. That's just a little tidbit I wanted to put in there, because there are still things like that. Like, it just shows that we're we're honestly like way less evolved than we think we are. And yeah, so it's very natural to want to be in nature and feel soothed by nature as well, which is something that people, I think they understand that, like, oh, when I take a walk, I feel calm. but I don't think they understand why, and that's why. But I know that a lot of people are going to be like, "Oh, I don't like being outside. I hate being outside. I hate X and Y and Z." And to those people I say, first of all, that's not natural. I'm just, people are going to be mad. It's not natural to not be outside, not want to be outside. Unless if it's like you live in the Arctic or something. If it's a nice day out and you don't want to go outside and you just want to stay in and do whatever, that's not natural to want to do that. And the reason why these people have these feelings of I don't want to be outside, I don't want to go out on this nice day and take a walk or whatever, it's because our need for dopamine in the modern world and our easy access to it is actually clouding that natural feeling. So, dopamine, you'll notice from this entire conversation we've had, dopamine is the ruler of the human brain. Especially if you have ADHD, it is also a ruler for the ADHD brain. But a lot of things, literally, my lesson for life recently has been learning how to overcome dopamine impulses in order to get shit done. For example, I would get a dopamine boost if I just laid in bed, ate donuts, and watched a Netflix movie instead of, going out and taking a walk or doing something productive like my homework. And so you have to overcome these primitive instincts in order to do things that you really want to do. And like the same thing with getting outside and doing something that like everybody, people say they're like, "Oh, I don't feel good after I'm outside," whatever. Lies, okay? It's literally in our brain wiring to want to be outside. And like I was saying with the trees, like if you're walking outside and you see things coming in and out of your vision, that is physically soothing to your brain, most people's brains, I would assume. But dopamine, the need for dopamine can cloud that feeling of wanting to be outside. So like a lot of people with video games, a lot of men especially are having a tough time with this of like wanting to be out inside all the time and just play video games with their friends, play for 7 hours straight, and they never feel the need to go outside and touch some grass. And that's a problem. And the reason they feel that is because the short-term reward of playing video games for 7 hours and distracting your brain is in the moment much more rewarding to your brain than going outside, getting your shoes on, getting into some outside clothes, and going outside and taking a walk. So that's another instinct that you have to overcome is the long-term thinking. Just pause, wait, and think, and be like, "Hey, what's the consequence or what's the reward for this thing if I do it right now?" And that's where the consciousness comes into play as well. You have to live more consciously. We do a lot of things. We do so many things on autopilot and we don't even realize it. Last point. So, last point is family. So, I moved across the country away from my entire family with my partner to Florida. And I'm not going to say the state I'm from because I feel like I don't know, I feel like that's a little too personal for the YouTubes. But I moved literally across the country, several states away from my family. And I recently have realized I kind of like sat and took a look at my feelings, and I was like, why do I feel this way? And I realized I feel a deep wrongness about moving away from my family. And I couldn't really understand why because, I have my family here like on my phone. I can just text them whenever, I call them whenever. But I just still feel a deep wrongness about not being in close proximity to them. And I feel like a lot of other people feel this way too. If you ever moved away from your family and you just feel like something's missing, it might not be that noticeable at first, but yeah, I just realized there's something wrong. And I realized that this is because, like, when I was thinking about it, that tribes, we used to live in families, and you never left your family for the most part. Some people might have ventured away from the group, whatever, gone to other groups, but for the most part you stayed in your family for your entire life. You were together your entire life. And there's also another point with that of babies. So in today's world, unfortunately, it's very, very difficult to raise babies and raise families while having a job. And but most people need to. And we're noticing, I think we're going to see. My prediction is we're about to see an epidemic of children who are disconnected from themselves, who have a lot of social issues, who can't regulate themselves at all because they're forced to grow up in these families where both the parents need to work to survive. And we're not made to do that. We're made to have at least one parent with us for the literally attached to you for the first 2 years of life. And they've done studies on this as well as with babies that are with their mother as much as possible, like pretty much 24/7, they actually end up being much more developed, and they are able to, what's the word? I just used it. I don't remember the word. They're able to calm themselves a lot easier. They have these like natural instincts of calming themselves down and emotional regulation, that's the word, regulation. And yeah, so I think that's going to be a problem here in the future with our new generation of kids that are, especially their parents are basically their iPads now. Oh boy, yeah, I'm worried about that, but yeah. It's just I want you guys to take away from this, like, stop taking yourself so seriously. At the end of the day, we're all just freaking animals on this earth, man. We're very developed animals for sure, but we're just animals. And when tough things happen, I just want you to remember that, don't take yourself too seriously because we're not really made to be doing what we're doing right now. And we're not made to be in this fast-paced environment, this many dopamine hits available to us, this many things to do. Oh, I have to go to work for 10 hours. Oh, I have to do this one thing for 10 hours. Like, it's all just very, very unnatural. And if you feel like how I feel right now, which is like, I need to stop, like, I need to get out of this somehow, you're not alone. That is me too. So, this video is deviating a lot from what the videos I've done before is. I did touch on ADHD a little bit, but so far this video or this channel has been mostly ADHD stuff. But I'm actually, I don't really give a flying fuck. I know that the algorithm isn't gonna like me, but I'm gonna make the content I want to make, and hopefully, it's entertaining. If it's not, that's okay, because I really just wanted to talk about it. But let me know what you guys think. As I said before, I do talk to you guys in the comments. I love like debating you guys on stuff and seeing what you have to say, seeing how you think about the world. And there's actually like a good, I want to say 20% of what I say actually comes from subscribers too, where we have these like we have these conversations in the comments, and people make me realize things that I didn't realize before. And a lot of times I'll say something wrong or something, and so I'm improving myself a lot from this channel actually. And so thank you guys for that. I do appreciate it. But that's all I have for you today. I hope you guys had a lovely day, and I hope you like my bamboo plant too. I haven't given it a name yet, even though I've had it forever. I feel like he just needed to be in the frame today. But yeah, if it's not a good day, make it a good day. Go do something good. Go out in nature. Go do a hobby that you love. My advice to you today is don't distract yourself. Don't do something where you're out of your body. Like, just don't just scroll on your phone, don't just go, don't distract yourself. Go do something with yourself today, even though it's tough. Um yeah. I'll see you guys in the next video, hopefully. Bye.